Thanks, Nina. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining. So yeah, as Nina said, I'm going to be talking about global campaigns and the impact they can have on your brand. Now, when we're talking about the launch of a global campaign, there are many factors to consider, but I'm going to break this down. I'm going to look at a few of the key areas. So we're going to look at the impact they can have for your brand overall. We're going to look at the barriers preventing success and how to navigate global media landscapes. And we can go into this in a bit more detail later on, but this is one area that I really want to focus on. And the message that I want to get across is that a one-size-fits-all approach just isn't going to work. We're also going to look at a few examples of campaigns we've launched over recent years here at Digital Loft, the results we've secured, and also the factors that we implement in strategies in order to achieve those results. So before we jump in, I just want to give you a bit about my background and why I'm in a position to talk about global campaigns. So I have almost 10 years experience across digital PR, content marketing, and influencer outreach. I've worked with clients across a variety of markets and industries, including sports, finance, health, and through my extensive experience, I've been able to understand different global media landscapes and implement effective strategies based on my research. And because of this, I've been able to work with a team of experts where we've delivered data-driven campaigns that have then gone on to secure results on publications such as Forbes, USA Today, Travel and Leisure Spain, and more. And I've just highlighted a few examples of campaigns that myself and the team have worked on over recent years, and just a variety of topics we've covered. So as you can see, we've looked at the most stunning sports venues around the world, right through to the best cities in Europe for nightlife. So to begin with, we're going to look at the benefits that global campaigns can have for your brand. And of course, there are so many benefits, but I'm going to cover the three that I think stand out and have the biggest impact by far. Now, the first one is bigger exposure. So when widening the scope and launching digital PR campaigns outside of the UK, your brand will be positioned in front of a new audience. It will increase brand awareness on a scale that you may have never witnessed before. And with the right strategy in place, you'll be able to position your brand as the expert in its field and diversify your backlink profile, which will help to strengthen the EEAT profile of your brand, which we all know is more important than ever. The second one is market growth. So if you're a brand that operates in multiple markets, you can use this to your advantage if other countries are facing difficulty. And to put this into context, I've just shared an example here. So there may be economic uncertainty in one country, but for others, consumers may be spending more money than ever, giving you the chance to accelerate your digital PR efforts. I've also included a point here that I want to focus on. It's just that it's important to navigate market downturns and not put the brakes on digital PR activity. When there's financial uncertainty within an industry or just a difficult period overall, it's the marketing budget that's often the first to be cut, when in fact it needs to be the last. Digital PR plays a fundamental role in getting your brand in front of its target audience and also driving revenue and traffic. So if anything, putting the brakes on is only going to impact results negatively, when in fact we need to be spending on marketing and PR more than we've ever done before to really accelerate those results. And then thirdly, and finally, probably the one that people think is the most important, better results. So exposing your brand to a new market by sharing data-driven and insightful digital PR campaigns will result in growth and better results. Your brand will be positioned as the go-to experts ahead of your competitors, helping to build a trustworthy relationship. Whether your key goal is to increase referral traffic, revenue, or brand awareness, global campaigns will play a fundamental role in achieving these goals. Finally, most brands will focus their efforts solely in the UK, but with the correct research conducted, your brand can identify new markets to target in. And this goes back to a point on my previous slide where if you can expand into various markets, you're going to be put ahead of your competitors. Now, over recent years, many industries have faced uncertainty and difficult times due to the likes of the pandemic and just consumer spending habits changing. So if you can diversify and expand into more varied markets, it's going to create a sort of a financial safety net around your brand. And now I want to touch on navigating global media landscapes and the barriers preventing success. And as I mentioned at the start of my talk, I really want to get across the importance of a one-size-fits-all approach just isn't going to work. And if you're basing your strategy around this approach, you're not going to reap the results you want if you're really taking into consideration each market and tailoring your approach to them. So there are many factors to consider when thinking about your strategy, but I want to just highlight 5. A, because I feel like these are some of the most important, but B, on the other hand, some of them are also overlooked when they shouldn't be. So before your brand launches a global campaign, it's important to understand the markets you'll be targeting, how their media landscapes operate, and any barriers that could affect results. So when you're thinking about your strategy, you need to think about what topics do and don't work. Use Google Trends to identify trending topics, speak to journalists on the ground to understand their media landscape, and research where your target market are hanging out online. This is a really important point to think about, because if you're pitching out topics, like campaign topics that aren't relevant to your brand, you're not going to get the results that you want. And then if anything, the campaign is going to be missed and you're just going to be wasting your resources. We then need to consider national holidays and making sure we're considering holidays such as Thanksgiving. In the US, obviously this is a massive holiday, but if you've been solely used to operating in the UK and just pitching to UK press, you'll only be considering UK bank holidays. But when we go on to the next level of global campaigns, we need to be thinking outside the box and also taking national holidays and awareness days into consideration around the world. The same also needs to be said about annual leave. As we know, as PRs here in the UK, July and August, it's peak out of office time. And if we're being honest, coverage does tend to slow down. So when you are planning your strategy, you need to think about these periods and making sure you're launching campaigns around them to get the best results possible. Cultural sensitivity is crucial to realize that topics that work well in one country may not resonate in others and could offend people and cause negative press. I'm going to touch on this in a bit more detail further on in my talk as well. The next one is global events. It's important to keep up to date with news in markets that your brand is looking to grow in. Now, when we say global events, this can be anything from the wildfires that have just been experienced in the US. It could be flooding, but it could be global conflict, which unfortunately is more common than what it has ever been. We really need to take global events into consideration, because if you're launching a campaign, for example, that's targeted at the US, if they're experiencing wildfires, you really need to think, is the research relevant, or could it potentially damage my brand? If you're pitching something to an area that's experiencing difficulty, it's not gonna represent your brand in the right way. And if anything, it's just going to have a negative impact. Time zones is the last one. So check each market's time zone before pitching to them. If your pitch doesn't land first thing in the morning, your email will drop to the bottom of journalist inbox, which again is going to result in wasted efforts. Of course, there are situations such as breaking news where, if news was to break at 2:00 in the afternoon, of course, jump on it then. But overall, we need to be getting there first thing in the morning ahead of competitors. So just to recap, if you don't take these factors into consideration, you could be wasting your efforts and potentially damage your brand's reputation. Now, all those points I've just highlighted are key factors and they do need to be considered when planning a strategy. But there's one that I just want to touch on in a bit more detail, and it's the importance of time zones. One, again, because it's really important, but two, it's definitely one that gets overlooked. So if we take the US as an example and we look at the graphic on the left of the screen, this shows just how varied time zones in one country alone can be. Now, like I said before, if you're used to just pitching in the UK, you're going to just be pitching in one book send first thing in the morning, which is absolutely fine because we're all in the same time zone. But when we're launching global campaigns, we need to be thinking one step ahead. So if we are pitching a campaign or a reactive piece, and we want it to land at 8 a.m. in the US. If we look at the table on the right of the screen, if we want to pitch to a state that falls under the Eastern time zone, we need to be pitching in the UK at 1:00 to get it there at 8:00 in the morning in the US. But if then we go to Pacific time, we want to be pitching at 4 p.m. in the afternoon here in the UK. Now, to anyone outside of the PR world, the difference between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. may not sound a lot, but in the PR world, we know that that is a long time and it can make a big difference. If you're not on it with time zones, your competitors probably will be. By the time you've pitched, all the stories will be covered and you're just going to be dropped into the bottom of journalist inbox, which again, I know I've said it, but it's wasted efforts. So time zones really is a key factor to consider. And again, just to touch on research, I just wanted to get one message across, and that is research is key. Don't just presume that topics that were successful in the UK will reap the same benefits globally. And to touch on this in a bit more detail, I just want to share an example of a campaign that we launched here at Digital Loft in the UK a few years back. And then we launched the exact same concept in the US. So I'm just going to go over the results in the UK and then how the US compared. So just over 3 years ago when I started at Digital Loft, one of the first campaigns I helped to launch was the STI calculator. Now this was for a client in the men's health space who really wanted to raise the profile of their brand. They wanted to really get in front of their target audience as well as position and getting their products out as well. They wanted to tackle the subject on taboo topics such as sexual health. Now, many brands will want to stay away from topics such as sexual health, but as I mentioned, they wanted to do the opposite. They wanted to get people talking and they wanted to get journalists engaged, which is where the STI calculator was born. Now, the results spoke for themselves. We launched it in the UK and it secured 32 pieces of national and regional coverage with a national average DR of 63. It ticked off dream publications for our client with just a few examples there of the Pub Post, Lab Bible and Daily Star, and it featured in industry newsletters such as The Grapevine. So when our client came to us and said, we want to now expand into the US, we want to see how our brand will be perceived, we want to see if taboo subjects and our products as well will be well received in the US. So we thought it worked in the UK, it will surely work in the US. The short answer to that was that it didn't, and it did the complete opposite. It got no results, it didn't get any coverage at all. But because this was a test project, it helped us to gain really valuable experience and it helped to shape future strategies. I think one piece of advice that I would give to anyone thinking about launching a global campaign and whether a topic will or won't work in a certain market is that go back to basics, really understand your target market, where they're hanging out online, but more importantly, what publications in the industry are covering. This is key. If you're not understanding what industry publications they're covering and you're just pitching any old topic, it's not going to be covered. And again, it's wasted resources, it's wasted effort. So really focus on understanding which topic in each market is going to be the most successful. So now, as I mentioned, I want to go over some examples of campaigns we've launched at Digital Loft over recent years. And I'm going to focus on two markets, Spain and Netherlands, mainly because in my experience, they're two trickier markets to land coverage in. So I'm just going to go over some of the results and then explain how we achieve them as well. So to start with Spain, so the client in question were relocation experts helping Brits and Americans move to Spain. In terms of the brief, it was to create digital PR campaigns that will land coverage in Spanish, British and American publications and increase the volume of people wanting to relocate to Spain. So in terms of the impact and results, we secured 48 pieces of relevant coverage. Keywords such as moving to Spain went from position 2 to 1 and Americans moving to Spain position 14 to 1. We were also able to land dream publications on the likes of New Yorker Daily Bulletin, Forbes and the local ES, with some of these publications covering research more than once to our client. And finally, we helped our client be featured in online interviews on publications such as GB News. So we just want to highlight some of the standout coverage we secured here, but also the relevance of it as well. When our client came to us, when we first onboarded them, they really wanted to be associated with key terms and to really sort of excel their brand awareness. So of course, relevance is at the heart of our strategy and the campaigns we launch. But if you can get that nailed on, that is then going to be reflected on a bigger scale. So as you can see here, through the campaigns that we launched and the research that we were sharing, we were able to get key phrases, mention article headlines as well. So our client was associated then with keywords such as retire in Spain, reasons to retire in Menorca, but also Spain overall. And then of course, just retirement and Spain as well, really key words associated to them. And because we were able to do this, we were then able to land that coverage on dream publications, such as the New Yorker Daily Bulletin and the local ES. This really helped to position our client as as an expert in their field, and it helped to build trust between them and their target audience. We'll then look at the Netherlands. So this time it was for a company specialized in blinds and curtains. Their brief, it was across SEO and PR. It was a collaborative project, but just on the PR side of the brief, it was to create campaigns that will help raise brand awareness in the Netherlands and drive traffic to key areas of the site via Dutch publications. Again, the results spoke for themselves. So we increased estimated monthly organic traffic by 95% in 12 months. Keywords such as blind went from position 4 to 1, and roller blinds had a huge jump from position 39 to 4. Again, we added the dream links on publications with a few examples there. And one of our campaigns was also featured on a Dutch radio station. So again, I just want to share some of the coverage highlights. And similar to the strategy that's implemented in Spain, we really needed to work out our client overall in terms of their target audience, where they were hanging out online, but also where our client wanted to be positioned. And again, we managed to land coverage on dream publications. Now, of course, hero campaigns are at the center of our work, but we need to be able to explore other avenues as well. And in this instance, we knew that the Netherlands was going to be a bit of a tricky market for coverage in. So when we onboarded the client, we really wanted to understand not only about their brand overall, but their team. And we soon realized that they had some really good in-house experts to their disposal. So as you can see in the bottom right corner, I've just highlighted there an expert who was mentioned in an article title. And in this instance, it was talking about the top interior trends of 2024. Now, as we know, with EEAT and relevance, we really want to be positioning the brand as an expert in its industry, but also a really trustworthy source. So we were able to use in-house experts to our advantage, and this has really helped to drive results. So if you are a business owner now, start thinking, we have in-house experts, but we're not really utilizing them. Think about key topics that you could comment on. Is there any breaking news happening? Or even if you've got relevant in-house data, you could potentially pitch with commentary alongside it. If so, you really need to be taking advantage of this in 2025. As this, again, it's going to really strengthen the EEAT profile of your brand, but it's just going to accelerate results overall. So now I'll share some of the results from two of the more tricky markets in Spain and the Netherlands. I'm going to talk about the strategies that we implement here at Digital Loft and how we secure the results that we do. So the first one would be in the overall strategy. So we carry out in-depth research before we go into ideation to ensure we fully understand what press and consumers want to see in each market. We then need to consider language. So we use bilingual in-house experts who can help to communicate with journalists in different countries. This is a really important factor to consider because although English is one of the most widely spoken languages around the world, it doesn't mean that every journalist receiving your pitch is going to be fluent in English. So if you're pitching a campaign that's really data heavy, but the journalist isn't native in English, it's highly likely they're gonna find it hard to understand and digest the research, which probably means that it's going to be missed. So pitching where necessary in native languages is really essential. We then have an always-on approach. So we continuously monitor global news and events to see what topics are trending in each market and what hooks can be utilized to accelerate our digital PR efforts. Then most importantly, we have a team of experts. From A/B testing and utilizing years of experience across the team, we know which topics will and won't work, helping to enhance and protect the brand's identity. We speak to journalists on the ground, which helps us feed into our pitching processes. Again, A/B testing, this links back to the example I said about the UK versus US. We tested the water there, and because we did it, we gained valuable experience, and it's really helped to shape future strategies. And then finally, awareness. So we create awareness day calendars for each territory, which helps us to plan ahead and understand the competitor landscape in these countries. This may sound like a really simple tip, but just creating a calendar of awareness days and national holidays will really help to not only accelerate results, but it'll also help you to plan in advance. As we know in the UK, awareness days in particular are great hooks, and this will be the same in every market as well. So really researching national days and awareness days in each market, planning them out on a calendar and making sure you pitch prior to these happening it's going to put you in a really strong position. As we know in the UK, if we look at Christmas, for example, we can be getting requests from journalists in August, September, maybe even earlier. And it just emphasizes the point of being ahead of the curve and making sure we're pitching in plenty of time. Otherwise, we're just going to miss the boat. So now we've gone over the impact that global campaigns can have for your brand. We've looked at how to navigate different media landscapes, the barriers for preventing success. And I've gone over some campaign examples and how we achieve the results we do. You may be sat thinking, is a global campaign right for your brand? And if so, you want to ask yourself these questions. The first being, are you looking to drive traffic, revenue, and brand awareness outside of the UK? Does your brand offer products and services outside of the UK, but most of your traffic and revenue is being driven on a domestic level? Do you feel like your brand has saturated the UK market and needs to open up new revenue streams? And finally, do you want to gain the edge over your competitors and be the go-to experts in your industry? If you've answered yes to all of those questions, if not some, then global campaigns could be the next step for you. Thank you for listening. I hope you found my talk insightful. If you've got any questions on any of the points that I've covered or want to know a bit more about how DigitalLoft can help you, I've dropped my social links there, so please feel free to reach out. And I'd be more than happy to take any questions now as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Jack. We did have a couple of questions that's come in via email, actually. The first one being, how do you build those relationships and outreach to journalists in the markets where your team may not have those established connections and a presence?
I think it touches on a few points that I mentioned before, and it's going back to basics, finding out where your target market are hanging out online, what topics they're interested in as well. One thing, the Dutch client I mentioned in my talk, one thing we did when we onboarded them is that we arranged a call with a Dutch journalist to really understand what the media landscape over there looks like, what journalists want to receive, but also how they want to be addressed as well, which provided really good insight for us. And again, I know I said it quite often, but it helped us to shape our strategy moving forward. And because of it, we were able to secure some really good results. I think another example as well, and it's something we've proven to be quite successful at DigitalLoft, is that if we're onboarding a new client, but also if it's in a new market, pitching out to journalists is just like an introduction, explaining, what your experts can comment on. If you've got any internal data that might help with their stories, and just make them aware of sort of like the products and services that you offer as well. They may not reply right there and then, but what we found is it might be a couple of months down the line, if they're then covering a story that they know they need an expert for, they may well reach out to you.
Okay, brilliant. And then the next question that came in was, could you share any details about how you measure the success of global campaigns and perhaps any tools you use?
Yeah, so I think backlinks is obviously one that everyone focuses on, but we need to be looking at the bigger picture as well. We need to be looking at like how campaigns of research are being perceived on social media. So we had an example the other day where we pitched some research out that we were really confident with. We thought it'd get loads of coverage. And for the first few days, it didn't. However, it went viral on X.
Okay.
It had the main editor at 442 covering the research. I say covering it, they were sharing it on their X profile. But then a few days later, that the research was then shared online as well on the website. So making sure as well, we're just monitoring social media because there will be a knock-on effect from that, especially if it's gaining loads of traction. I think as well, like I mentioned in my talk, if we can get brands in online interviews, but also I said as well with the Netherlands example, we were featuring on a radio station as well, but also including soft KPIs. So, it could be that 60% of links are coming from one market or 60% of links are being driven to international pages on the site. I think that's also a big help. In terms of tools, I think especially the coverage tracking, don't just be relying on Ahrefs and Google. One thing that we found is that a lot of international coverage, especially as well in the US, It's hard to pick up. So using a VPN, that can help you find a lot of coverage that you may not have found if you're just using the likes of Google.
Right. Well, that was all the questions we had. Thank you so much for everyone who joined our first episode of LoftTalk for 2025. There will be more coming.